theyeshiva.net.
Welcome back, everybody. Baruchim Abayim. Wonderful to see you all. So we are up to Pesachim, Daf Dalet Amud Beis, the middle of the page. Mamash, the middle of the page. The line starts b'dirabanan, 2 dots, iboye luhu. Right? Iboye luhu. You see Mamash, the middle of the page. The line starts hemnu rabanan b'dirabanan, 2 dots, a colon, and then iboye luhu hamaske bayis lachavere. The Gemarah now raises the following question. Also a question about a renter. Previous sugya we learned about the renter of a home and his status and his obligations. So now comes a new question. They ask the following question. If somebody rents a home to his friend, becheskas baduk, assuming that it was checked, dikas chametz has been done already on it. That was the assumption. It's becheskas baduk. No, what happens now? Umatzoi she'enei baduk. As the person moves into the home and he takes a look, he finds that bdikas chametz has not been done in this home. So what's the question? Mahu, what's the question? What's the status? Mihave kemekach toos oiloi. Do we say halachically this is like a mekach toos? It's a mistaken sale. I buy something from you in the assumption that X, Y, and Z is taken care of, and then I see loy dubim v'loyar, you deceived me, it's not true. I could back out of the sale. I could tear up the contract and say, listen, even though we already did the kinyan, I already paid you, I acquired it, so I can't retract anymore. But since it was based on an erroneous assumption, I was deceived. So therefore, if I want, I can back out of the rental. Even though we signed and everything is done. Legally, I acquired it already, too late. You signed the lease and you're in. But I could say, no, you deceived me. It's a mekach tos. Or look, Rashi says, mi have a mekach tos. V'im ba ha-soicher, lachzer boy. If the renter wants to retract, he wants to have charot, he wants to regret, al yidei aliloisov, or according to some versions, al yidei alilazu, through this excuse, v'loimer and say, loikach sacharti. This is not, I rent a house, instead you give me a house that doesn't have a roof, doesn't have walls. Yeah, it's a mekach tos, it's a mistake. You lied to me. Loikach sacharti. I didn't rent such a house. V'ein t'nai shalonu kayam. And therefore our condition, our agreement, doesn't have any validity. Ma'u lachzer, is this enough of an excuse to say a mekach tos? That's the question that the Gemarah raises. Now, what makes it becheskas baduk? What would make this house becheskas baduk? So Tosfos says, if you take a look at becheskas shu baduk, you see nira l'rashba the b'shloisha asa ayri. It's talking about on the 13th day of Nisan. The barbos are ala masker livdik, because if it was on the 14th day, in other words, I rented it on your dalid. Who has the obligation of dikas chametz? The landlord, not the renter, like we learned before. Whoever owns the house and whoever has access to the house, right? Whoever has the keys, the night of erev Pesach, he is mechuyev in dikas chametz. So therefore, if I rented it in Yudalid, so then the masker is mechuyev dikas chametz. So what Tosfos is saying is, so then what's the question? Say it's a mekach tos. Let the masker do b'dikas chametz. I come in, there was no b'dikas chametz. Fine. Halachically, you'll take him to the rabbi and say, you have to do b'dikas chametz. We're good. So Tosfos says, obviously, he's talking about Yud Gimel. So therefore, really, I would be mechuyev dikas chametz, because by the time of b'dikas chametz arrived, I'm the renter and I'm in the house. Nonetheless, we made up that it's going to be baduk, right? So this is practical. People rent homes in Orlando. It's a very popular thing. People go to Florida, they rent a house. I want to come to a clean house. I don't want to sit and do b'dikas chametz. I don't want to have to clean the house for chametz. I want to have a clean house. I want to get ready for Pesach. I may come a week before. Suddenly you come into the house, a chazer shtal. Well, here the issue is not a chazer shtal. Here's the issue is a chametz shtal. So what's the question? So I say, forget it. This whole rental is done. I'm not interested. You say, 1 second, we have an agreement? No. The agreement was with B'dikas Chametz. There was no B'dikas Chametz. Huh? What should be the reason I'm not Because there's a difference. If, Marshall, you sell me a house and it's supposed to be a house with 4 bedrooms and a bathroom, and suddenly I find out there's no bedroom, there's no bathroom, and the bathroom is not working, and there's no electricity, and there's no refrigerator, and you forgot to fix the heat, and you also forgot to fix the leaks, and so on and so forth. So then, it's, so to speak, a blemish in the house itself, right? Here the problem is, it's not, the house is a wonderful house, it's a perfect house. The question is, the chiyuv of b'dikas chametz, that there was no b'dikas chametz done. So is that enough to actually cancel out the sale legally? You'll soon see the other side even more, because we'll see what the answer is. That's what Tosfos learns, that the question is Yud Gimel. The Ran explains that you could also say, of course, it happened Yud Dalet. But the renter doesn't want to, the landlord doesn't want to be by the chametz. In other words, you're right. If he wants to, he's mechuyev to be by the, he says, I'm not interested, I have to leave, I have to travel, I can't, whatever it is. In other words, you don't have to say it's Yud Gimel. The Ran says it could be Yud Dalet. So what's the problem? The problem is, for whatever reason, the landlord is not going to do it. So now it falls on me. So now I have to spend 3 hours or 6 hours or 8 hours or an hour doing B'dikas Chametz. And as we learned, B'dikas Chametz is a big tircha, meaning it's a lot of work. So I want to say, you know what? This whole thing is canceled. I have to do B'dikas Chametz. If the landlord is not going to do it and I want to live in the house and it's filled with Chametz, I have to do B'dikas Chametz. The question is, can I use that as an excuse to back out? Toshma, comes the Gemarah and says, Amar Abaye, come and hear the answer. Abaye said, a gewaltige chiddush, loy mi boya. Huh? The shaila is not if the chametz becomes yours. We learned before that there's a big svara to say, although it's not conclusive. The Shulchan Aruch Harav discusses this at length in Siman Tov Lamed Zayin and in Kuntras Acher and earlier. And the Mishnah Berurah brings it. There's a big svara to say that when I move into a house, if it's before Pesach and before the Zman HaIsur, I acquire all the chametz in the house because I have a right to use it. You left it and you were mafkid, and that's why the Pesachim say that I should also be mevatel the chametz. Right? I should also be mevatel the chametz. But here the question is something else. I want to back out of the whole sale. I want to say it's a mekach tos. Toshma come in here and answered. Amar Abaye said, no. No question. In a region where people don't have a custom to give money, agra is money. The lo yavi agra, they don't give money in order for somebody to check the house. In other words, there were regions that people used to constantly hire others for b'dikas chametz. It was a service. It was a service. You paid a certain amount of money and you had a service. You'll do my b'dikas chametz. There was such a concept. So Abaye says, for sure in a region where that's not the case, people don't give money for b'dikas chametz, meaning everybody does b'dikas chametz themselves in their own house, then for sure we will say that the rental agreement is valid. Why? The nichele leinish lekiyum mitzvah begufe. The Chazal assume that a person is happy to observe a mitzvah begufe himself with his body, and therefore we taina that even if he would have known for sure that this man is not going to do b'dikas chametz or didn't do b'dikas chametz, it's not a reason to retract the sale, because even though you're not interested in the tircha, nonetheless there's another side which is happy to do a mitzvah. A person wants to be mekayim a mitzvah. Because he wants to be mekayim a mitzvah, Abaye says, we can say that this person would not see this as a reason to retract from the sale. Oh, you didn't do b'dikas chametz. Mela, there's no electricity in the house, or Rahman al-Itzlan, there's no Wi-Fi in the house, or Rahman al-Itzlan, there's not enough air conditions or bathrooms in the house. Okay, that's a reason for mekach tos, especially if we made up clearly. But here, even though I assumed it was baduk, and I may be upset, it's not an upsetness that would make me retract from the sale, because even if I would have known, what do I know? That I have to do b'dikas chametz. There's a simcha in it. There's a joy in it that a person wants to do a mitzvah. Ad kedei kach. He's coming and saying, I don't want it. So let's see. He says, I don't want. So what are you fighting with him? He says, I'm not interested. So take a look in Rashi. Yeah. Take a look in Rashi. Nobody gives money and hires other people to be boidik. Elakol yishvish boidik is Beis. The lay matzi lemeima lay mekachtos. The renter can't come and say, "You fooled me. The sale was a mistake. Let's go back." The ima yisi yoidei shene bodik la yisi soicher. What's the whole idea of mekachtos? Mekachtos is based on a legal assumption that what? If I would have known these facts, I would have never taken the house from you, right? If you find that there's a needle on the floor, it's not a reason for mekachtos. Pick up the needle. Mekachtos means, that if I would have known that this is the situation, I would have never taken this house. In other words, you fooled me, you deceived me, and that's how you got me in. So Mela, there was no consent. I was never kind of this house. I was kind of a different type of house in my imagination. So could we say the same thing here? I was kind of a house that was baduk. And therefore, if I would have known the facts, I would have never taken it. You fooled me. We don't say this. Why? Because it's certain that a person wants to do a mitzvah. He's happy to do it. And even if he would have known, the guy would say, you know what, forget it, I can't do it, I don't have time. He wouldn't have left it. But Abaye says a bigger chiddush. Even in a region where the common custom is that people rent others. They hire people to be by the chametz. So l'cha'ira here should already be a mekachtos. He actually has to hire somebody to do it. He says, a person is happy to observe a mitzvah, not only begufay with his body, but also to spend money on doing the mitzvah. Zok Rashi, afilu ba'asru de nehigi kol bnei ha'ir. Everyone has a custom. Liskar, boitkin, kol ish bebeis. Everybody rents people to check out the chametz, every person in their home. The ika has to chesrin kiss. So now it's not just a challenge of time and effort. It's also chisarin kiss. Your wallet is going to be depleted. You have to pay somebody to do b'dikas chametz. Afilu hachi, we say, iyada be'esmel deloy badik. If he would have known yesterday, before he moved in, loy have a hader be. He would have not retracted. The nichelei chuli, as the Gemarah says, because a Jew is happy to observe a mitzvah even if it costs him money. V'haideka hader be. This person is saying, I want to back off. In other words, it is a reason. He's saying, so you're arguing with him? We say, no, mishamil sachriti. It's for a different reason. The ashkech beis sachriti de shvirim. He checked on Craigslist this morning, and he found a better house for a cheaper price. Legally, can't do anything about it. Because it's tough luck. If you buy a house, you buy a house. In this case, you rented a house. So I come up with an excuse. What's my excuse? My excuse is, b'dikas chametz. So Abaye says we don't accept this excuse. Why don't we accept this excuse? Because we're assuming if you're a Jew, you're happy to do a mitzvah. If you're happy to do a mitzvah, this is not a reason that's causing you agony that you would retract from the house. Are you retracting from the rental? It's because of another reason. You're attributing it to the fact that there was no b'dikas chametz. But halachically, we don't accept this taina, and therefore, you would continue to be the renter of the house, and of course you have to do b'dikas chametz because there's chametz over there. Yeah. Now it goes to the extent that the Ramah says in Shulchan Aruch and Siman Tov Lamed Zayin and many of the poskim, the Magen Avram and the Shulchan Aruch Harav, that agree based on what Tosfos says, that Tosfos it was on Yud Gimel. On Yud Gimel means I can't assume that it was baduk because it's Yud Gimel, right? It's on Yud Gimel. Nonetheless, what happened? We had a conversation. That means there may have been an explicit stipulation. It's not stam an assumption. If it's Yud Dalet, you could teach the Gemarah in two ways. Hamaske bayis l'chveira b'cheskel shobada because it was Yud Dalet. And basically the Gemarah is siding with the side. Earlier we asked, if you buy a house, if you rent a house in Yud Dalet, do you assume it's baduk or not? And the Gemarah wasn't sure what the answer is because the proof was refuted. We could see from this Gemarah, many Rishonim say that we side with the idea that it's cheskes baduk. That's one way you could learn the Gemarah, and that's taka the halacha that when you rent a house on your daled, you can assume that there's b'dikas chametz. If the guy is not there to ask and you don't know, you can assume there's b'dikas chametz, right? Unless you know for sure there was no b'dikas chametz because the guy is out of town or whatever. He told you he's not being baidik. And then you could still believe even a katan who says that we did dikas chametz, like we learned before, but you can assume. And you could say that's what the Gemarah is saying here, that it's Yudalad b'cheskas baduk, but that's not what Teves learns. Teves learns that what? That if it was Yudalad, then go tell the landlord to do it. So we answered that question. The Duran says you could, but he doesn't want to. In theory, you're right, justice, but he doesn't want to, so that's the question. But Teves learns it was Yud Gimel. So why is it b'cheskas baduk? The answer is, because he told me. He told me. So many say, even if there was a condition, I told him, I'm renting this house, but I want a clean house from chametz. And then I discover you violated the condition. Ad kidei kach. Some Daka argue. Some say that if there was a Tanai, then this whole Gemarah doesn't apply, because obviously this guy is an exception. If there was no Tanai, if it was becheskes baduk, I assume. But if I mamish said, then not. But many of the Rishonim, Taichin Teves, and this is brought lahalocha mamish and Shulchan Aruch, according to the Ramah, that even if there was a Tanai, nonetheless, Aitaka wanted it. Aitaka did not want the bother, but once it's there, Nichele, I have an opportunity to do a mitzvah, either myself or with money, I'm happy about it, and it's not really something that legally we would use as an excuse, as a valid complaint to be able to back out of the rental, and that's the halacha. The interesting question is, does he have to pay me back? Does he have to pay me back for the b'dikas chametz? If I did it myself, there's nothing to pay me back. I did the mitzvah with myself. Does he have to pay me back for b'dikas chametz? So this is a machloikas between the Rishonim. Some say he has to pay him back. True, you're happy to do it, but ultimately it was your obligation. And others say no. Nichalei love and mitzvahs v'mayne. He's happy to spend. He doesn't have to pay back. And the Balatanya brings in Shulchan Aruch Harav that since it's a suffix in the Rishonim, so the landlord can tell you, I hold like the Rishonim that I don't have to pay you back. So gay dingzich, and therefore, ultimately he can get away here. He can get away with it.
He's got the star with the condition in it. So he has a raya, he's a Eden. So let him bring his raya.
That's not the issue. He's not denying it.
I'm saying that as far as the...
No, false advertisement. But the point is, some Rishonim Takas say that, of course, the only question is, was it a mekach toas or not? So we say it's not a mekach toas. He can't back out of it and say that this is a horrible situation, but he still has to pay back. But others say that we know that even if he would have known yesterday that we have to pay for it since it's a mitzvah, it's not I have to pay to fix the electricity. Since I'm paying to do a mitzvah, so therefore halachically we assume that what? That he would have not retracted from it, and therefore it's not called a mekach toas now. You see here a gewaldike inyan, that there's a Jew who's screaming, I want to back out of this situation because there was no b'dikas chametz, and the Gemarah says, no, bistayid, you're a Jew, you want to do a mitzvah, and you want to even spend money for a mitzvah. And therefore we say we're not accepting that this is the reason you're backing out. This is not what's causing you the headache. He's screaming, you're a ganav, you're a lowlife, you're a shakran, you lied to me. Nonetheless, you see here a gewaldige vart about what we assume about a Jew. That nichalei leinish, la'avid mitzvah begufe, and even b'mamoinoi, and therefore we would assume that even if he would have known it yesterday, this would have not been a reason to back out, and hence, he's not even mechuyev to pay, according to many. But that itself is a machlokes. Yeah, so others say it was no, you're right, there's two ways of learning the Gemarah. There was no condition, it was just an assumption, there was no condition. And then if it was an assumption, it was taka the assumption for whatever reason, right? Let's say it was Yudalad, and I assume, and then there was no b'dikas chametz, and he says, listen, I'm sorry, can you back off? You can't back off because you're happy to do it. But sometime that even if there was a Tanai mamish, ad kedei kach it goes, which is much. Both are a big chiddush. Even if it was an assumption, it's a big chiddush because an assumption is still an assumption. Sag the Gemarah weiter. Tanan hasem. That's why, for example, in Shulchan Aruch you have a halacha. If I go into a shul and I see I don't have a talis and tefillin. Somebody just came into me over there in the other shul in 18, and he says he lost his talis and tefillin. What should he do? Yeah, so if you see talis and tefillin on the table, are you allowed to use it or not? It's gneva or gzela. I didn't give you permission. What do we say? Nichalei leinish. We say this lahalacha that nichalei leinish l'kiyum mitzvah b'mamoina. Even though I'm not doing the mitzvah myself, it's with my money, but I'm happy to do a mitzvah with mamoina, and therefore we assume that every Jew would be happy for a person to use his talis and tefillin. And therefore, we allow a person to do it. I will allow a person to do it. I mean, you can't take it away and take it to your house and give it to other people and make it yours. But this is also the basis of Nichalei La'anish La'avid L'Kiyum Mitzvah B'Mamayna, even though there is wear and tear. Tanan Hasam. Zog the Gemarah weiter. We learned there. What do we mean there? Meaning later, that Rashi says, Garsinan Afagav de Pirkinhi. It's not in our chapter, but it's later in the chapter. We have a Mishnah later. What did we learn in the Mishnah? Reb Meir Oimer Oichlin Kol Chamesh. Reb Meir says you're allowed to eat chametz the entire 5th hour. Meaning the 5th hour of Erev Pesach you can eat v'soifim b'tchila sheish. And you burn chametz in the beginning of the 6th hour. That's the opinion of Reb Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Oimer, Rabbi Yehuda is much more stringent. Oichlin Kol Arba. You could eat chametz the entire 4th hour of Erev Pesach, but toilin kol chamesh, and it hangs for the 5th hour, meaning you don't have to burn it, but you also can't eat it, but you could feed it to your animals. But he agrees that you burn it in the beginning of the 6th hour. What's the chiddush of this Mishnah? Min HaTorah, we assume, as we're going to explain now, that at the end of 6 hours, meaning the beginning of the 7th hour, that's when chametz becomes forbidden. You're not allowed to eat it anymore, you're not allowed to have it in your house anymore. But the Chazal were very cautious that if we delay it till that point, just for simplicity, let's assume sunrise was 6 o'clock a.m. exactly. So midday would be 12 p.m. exactly, right? 6 to 7 is 1 hour, 7 to 8 is 2 hours, 8 to 9 is 3 hours, 9 to 10 is 4 hours, 10 to 11 is 5 hours, and 11 to 12 is the 6th hour, 12 p.m. is the end of 6 hours, and 12:01 starts the 7th hour. Yeah, just for simplicity reasons. So if you would wait till 12 o'clock, and that's when you would burn your chametz, either right then or right before, we'll see that in itself as a conversation, but if you wait till then, we know that on a cloudy day, you may get confused, you may think, oh, it's 11 o'clock, and really it's 12 o'clock, because you're not sure, it's a cloudy day, or you just mistake by an hour, and what happens is, you leave your chametz till 1 o'clock, and when you're leaving your chametz till 1 o'clock, you violated a biblical prohibition. So Reb Meir came and said, the Chachamim said, let's just do it 1 hour earlier to create a buffer. What's called a geder, a syag, a fence, like many of the gzeres of the Chachamim. So even if a person is making a mistake, and he thinks that it's only 11 o'clock, right? And really it's great. It's 11 o'clock. You have to burn your chametz. It's 11 o'clock. 11 is the beginning of the 6th hour. So you can eat the whole 5th hour, but not the 6th hour. Usually we would say you can eat till 12. You can eat even 11:59. Comes Reb Meir and says, no. Don't eat from 11 o'clock, don't eat chametz, right? Oichlin only call chamesh. You can eat the 5th hour, which would mean from 10 to 11. And then when? And 11 o'clock, the beginning of the 6th hour, you burn. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, let's give a buffer of 2 hours. So only eat the 4th hour. Don't eat the 5th hour, which means don't eat already 10 o'clock. Not only you should desist from eating at 11, which is the 6th hour, the beginning of the 6th hour, in other words, Oichlin Kol Chamesh. You can only eat the 5th hour, which is 10 to 11. He says, no, even the hour before you shouldn't eat. So that means when should you stop eating chametz? You can only eat chametz for the first 4 hours, 6 to 7, 7 to 8, 8 to 9, 9 to 10. Right? 9 to 10. So we have here a big machloikus between the two opinions. Min HaTorah, only at the end of Chatzos, meaning at the end of 6 hours, it's Asur, but Rabbi Yehuda and Meir argue. Say Rashi, Sorfim b'tchilas sheish, lo yamtin atchilas sheva, shu asur min HaTorah, l'visha adam toya b'shah. People could make a mistake, many agoris here, in 1 hour, and therefore burn it b'tchilas sheish. So therefore, 11 o'clock, you got to burn your chametz. You can eat till 11, and 11 o'clock you can burn. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, toya adam yoyser mikan. People make mistakes even with 2 hours. V'tzarich l'srachik ben avera yoyser. You have to remove yourself from sin even more. So don't eat from the end of 4 hours and further. I don't want you anymore to eat even on the 5th hour. Not only on the 6th hour you shouldn't eat, but you can eat on the 5th hour, which would mean you can't eat from 11, but you can eat from 10 to 11. No, you should stop 10 o'clock. So you have 2 hours. So even if you're making a mistake, right, it's 12 o'clock and you think it's only 10 o'clock, great. So you think it's 10 o'clock, and 10 o'clock you're not going to eat. Yeah. That's the halacha that we follow. We stop eating 2 hours before the time. The hour is not exactly 60 minutes, but it'll be approximately 10 o'clock, give or take, when you're not allowed to eat chametz anymore, because we give ourselves 2 hours. These are called shoyas maniyas, meaning it's not hours exactly 60 minutes. It could be a little more, it could be a little less. And we burn it in the beginning of the 6th hour, and that extra hour, meaning between 10 and 11, you're not allowed to eat, but you could feed it to your dogs, you could give it to a neighbor, you could benefit from it even if you can't eat it, and then you burn it at 11 o'clock, which is tchilas sheish. That everybody holds tchilas sheish. What's this svara, 1 hour, 2 hours? That the Gemarah is going to explain in that Mishnah later in this parak, what the argument of Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda is. I mean, is it just a technical argument, like Rabbi Yehuda said people are more confused than Rabbi Meir? Like, what's the real argument? But the bottom line is, everybody gives a buffer zone, either 1 hour or 2 hours. What do we see from here? The kula almamiyah, everybody holds, chametz mishei shoyas alamayla aser. Everybody holds that at the end of 6 hours, chametz is biblically prohibited. That's for sure. That's what everybody holds. Rashi, the kula almamiyah chametz mishei shoyas alamayla aser, min ha-Torah. How do I know? The Eloi mitzirad urta, for it would only become prohibited at night, loy have a gazribe, they would not make any decree. The ben yemame le'leila loy to'inshi. Because people don't make a mistake between day and night. We don't say, oh, Yom Kippur starts at night, so therefore you should start fasting in the middle of the day before Yom Kippur. Why? Because people might make a mistake. They'll think, oh, it's still Erev Yom Kippur, really it's Yom Kippur. People know when night happens. That's no mistake. Therefore, we never make a decree start an hour or 2 hours earlier, because you may think it's still day and really it's night. When it's night, it's night. If chametz would begin to become prohibited only at night, the night of Pesach, then there would be no gzeira that you have to stop an hour or two before. The fact that they make a gzeira means everybody holds that midday is cutting, midday is deadline. From 12 o'clock it becomes prohibited. The question is, do you have to burn it? Do you have to burn it then? We say no. Burn it an hour earlier. And when should you stop eating? Okay, here's a machlokes. Stop eating taka an hour before, or stop eating 2 hours before. Frek the Gemarah, and here is one of those unique moments in terms of understanding the structure of Pesach. One word, minolon. How do we know this? How do we know this? Now, here we have to understand, what do you mean, how do we know this? We all know in Jewish life, you look at a calendar and it tells you, stop eating chametz 9:45, stop eating chametz 9:23, stop eating chametz 10:01. So that's how we know. We look at a calendar, right? Burn chametz, we'll always say, the last time to eat chametz is 9:23. And the time to burn chametz is 10:23, which is basically the idea over here, right? You stop eating chametz 2 hours before and you burn chametz 1 hour before. Obviously, they understood that it's not from the night. It's the middle of the day. Minolan, how do we know this? Now, what do we mean, how do we know this? There's no clear pasuk in Chumash for this. And the next page and a half, the next amud and a half, is basically going to be dedicated to this question. Where did we come up with this whole structure of Pesach the way we know it? And this is going to be an example of how Chazal had the text of Chumash. And that's the text they had that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote, Mipi Gvura. And they had to figure out the entire structure of halacha based on it. And this is now the question. Who decided, and whoever told us, that a day before Pesach, 6 hours before Pesach, I'm already not allowed to have chametz? I'm not allowed to, who said that? We all do it. We do b'dikas chametz the night before. We burn the chametz the next morning. But who said this? In other words, it says in Chumash, what it says in Chumash? It says in Chumash, you're not allowed to have chametz for 7 days. By us, the day begins with the night. So you're not allowed to have chametz from the night of Pesach. Just like Yom Kippur, you don't eat. I don't start fasting Erev Yom Kippur 12 o'clock or 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock. I don't start doing work because Shabbos is coming Friday afternoon. It doesn't work that way. I don't light Hanukkah candles Erev Hanukkah 12 midday. Hanukkah starts at night, Yom Kippur starts at night, Shabbos starts at night, Pesach starts at night. I don't sit in a sukkah 1 o'clock Erev Sukkot in the afternoon. There's enough chaos getting ready through Erev Sukkot. Pesach is an exception. Pesach, we say no, Pesach starts at night, but wait, already 6 hours before, you're not allowed to eat chametz, you're not allowed to have chametz. Who decided this? If it would say in Chumash, the day before Pesach at 6 hours, don't eat chametz, don't have chametz, fine. I understand, it doesn't say it. But obviously this is what they assume. How do I know they assume this? Because they made a gzeira to stop 11 instead of 12. Why are you making a gzeda to stop 11? Because I'm afraid you're going to get confused between 12 and 11. Why am I afraid? Because 12 is usur. If the issur would start at night, I wouldn't make him stop eating chametz at 11 o'clock in the morning because it's really night and he thinks it's 11 o'clock in the morning. If he's a normal person, nobody thinks that night is 11 o'clock in the morning. There are certain symptoms we call night. It's called sunset. It gets dark outside. Even on a cloudy day, you could distinguish between daytime and nighttime. I can make a mistake between 11 and 12, between 10 and 12, but not between 12 p.m. and 8 p.m. or 6 p.m. or 7 p.m., right? So obviously we see that there was no question that midday begins the issur. So Gemarah wants to know minala. How do we know this? How do we know this? Now, as an introduction to the whole next piece of Gemarah, even though this introduction is really inherent to the whole structure of Torah Shebaal Peh, but since I find constantly that people are very unaware of this, so therefore I'm going to give this introduction. It's an introduction to this Gemarah, but it's really an introduction to hundreds and hundreds and thousands of pieces of Gemarah that revolve and have a similar structure in one way or another. Because people who are not used to learning Gemarah, when they come to such a sugya, get very easily lost. Because it's a type of discipline that you don't have in other sciences, in other chachmas. You'll see soon. The analysis of the text is one that you don't have in other disciplines. It's not just plain logical ideas. Okay, that you could deal with. There's a lot of Gemaras like that. But this is some marriage between logic and text and analysis of the text in a way that is very unique. And therefore it always needs an introduction of how Torah was presented to the Jewish people. The way we understand it, wrongly, mistakenly, is there's two Torahs. There's a Torah called Torah Shebiksav, which is a written Torah. That you have Chumash. Chamisha Chumsha Torah. And then you have Torah Shebaal Peh. What's Torah Shebaal Peh? An oral Torah. Torah that was given by mouth, by heart. Meaning, in addition to the written text, you also have an oral presentation of Judaism, which has a lot of things that the written text don't have. The Rambam opens up his introduction to his Mishnah Torah. Torah b'firusha nitna. Torah was given with a commentary, with a pirush that was not written. It was oral. It was written much, much later in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi wrote it down in the Mishnah because he saw it's going to be forgotten. But till that point, it was always given over orally from Rebbe, from teacher to student, and then to the next generation, and to the next generation, always Baal Peh, even if people took notes. But there was no standard text that was revised and edited and authoritative that was used, and this went on till the days of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi lived a century after Churban Bayesheni, so you're dealing from Moshe Rabbeinu till the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash was almost 1,000 years, and then the second Beis Hamikdash was also another 500 years, so 1,500 years. There was an entire body of Jewish law that was given over verbally, only verbally, and then you had the text of Torah Shebiksav. So, for example, it says that you have to put on tefillin in Chumash. It says, "Ukshartam," we just read it, "Ukshartam lois al yadecha, v'hoyu l'toitofa is beinei necha." You should tie it to your hand and place it between your eyes. But first of all, what do I tie? What do I tie? It doesn't say clearly. What color should the tefillin be? Where exactly do I put them? What should say inside? The Torah is very ambiguous. It says toitofos. Now tell me what toitofos is. So there was an oral commentary to explain that you should have boxes that are tefillin, and this is what they look like, and this is what they contain, and this is how you make them, and this is their color, and this is their size, and this is where you place them, and this is their length. For example, tefillin are black. El tefillin are black. Nobody ever had green tefillin. And Pri Eitz Hadar is an esrog. Nobody brought a watermelon as an esrog. There's no such a thing even as a reform esrog. Even the reform didn't invent a new esrog as far as I know. Right? How do you know Pri Eitz Hadar is an esrog? So there was an oral commentary. But the truth is that it's much deeper than this. It's much more than this. It works the other way around. In many ways, it's not that Torah Shebaal Peh was given with Torah Shebiksav. Torah Shebiksav was given with Torah Shebaal Peh. And this is very fundamental. Again, it's not Torah Shebaal Peh was given with Torah Shebiksav. Torah Shebiksav was given with Torah Shebaal Peh. The best imagery for this is, I'll explain how it worked. I'll just give you an example. Say somebody goes to a lecture or a shiur, and the shiur goes on for hours. It's a 3, 4 hour or 5 hour presentation, maybe a full day of workshops, seminaries, classes, lectures, or a few days. And a person is sitting, and they want to retain the information, right? But if you write every word, you're not going to be able to concentrate on listening, yeah? So you do what's called, short notes or shorthand writing. Basically, you listen. And after every 2 or 3 minutes, you'll take a pen and summarize the idea that you heard, so that later you could review it. Now, if there's one idea, one concept that's really powerful, right? So you may underline it 4 times, or you may put 6 exclamation points, right? Or 2 question marks, or you'll make it bigger or bold, just to give that emphasis, like, like here was the punchline, like here we got it, etc. You'll come home, and your wife will ask you, how was the lecture? How was the shir? You'll say, it was unbelievable, it was incredible. Really? Can I hear about it? Yeah, here are my notes. And she opens up your notebook, and she takes a look, and she says, this is senseless. This is gibberish. I don't get anything. There's not one sentence that makes sense here. There's no beginning, middle, end, no cohesive sentences, nothing integrated. There's no elaborate ideas that are articulated in any definitive way. And you'll always say, you had to be there. You had to be there. If you were there and then you read the notes, then you get the notes, because the notes capture the lecture. From the notes itself, you won't understand the lecture. What did the Jews do for 40 years in the desert? They sat with Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was teaching. Moshe was teaching. I don't know why they didn't record it on MP3s and videos, but whatever the reason is, they were sitting and learning. How did they learn? Moshe spoke. The Gemarah says in Maseches Eruvin, Daf Nun Daled, Ketzat say the Mishnah, Moshe used to sit with his brother, and then he would sit with his nephews, and he would sit with Yehoshua, and then he would sit with all the Jewish people. Aaron heard every shir 4 times from Moshe. Others heard 3, others heard 2, and the masses heard at least once from Moshe. But everybody heard everything from Moshe if you wanted to come, unless you wanted to take off and go to Six Flags that day. But if you wanted to come, you came. And Moshe taught Jews Torah for 40 years. 40 years he taught. And he taught everything. He taught literally everything. But at the end of a shiur, he would give them notes. Those notes, that's Chumash. Those notes, that's the text of Chumash. But here's the difference between my example and the story I'm trying to convey. In my example, it's the student writing notes according to his capacity and according to his understanding. In Moshe's notes, you had the entire shiur, maybe a 6-hour shiur, contained in one verse. And therefore he wrote the pasuk in a way that captures every single detail he said in the shiur. But for this you have to be able to appreciate every letter, every nuance, an extra vav, an extra hey, an extra word, an extra pasuk. This is repeated here, this is repeated there. Here he uses this word, here he uses that word. This he says 3 times, this he says 4 times. He should have put it this way and not that way. And when you study that text, if you were at the shiur and you would read the pasuk Chumash, you would see 6 hours contained in one sentence. Maybe 6 weeks contained in one sentence. All we have are the notes. We don't... Huh? Okay, fine. It's all part of it. The Nekudas and the time, the trop, etc. We have the notes. We don't have the lecture. We weren't there. At least I wasn't there in my memory. So therefore, maybe spiritually, but not physically. So therefore, we have the notes. You look at the notes and you're like, what does this mean? Thank you. Tie it between your eyes. What should I tie between my eyes? Put it on your hand. I should take potato peels. I should take a potato, peel it, and do it around my hand like kids do. Sit in a hut for 7 days. Okay, what type of hut should I sit? A gazebo, a glass hut, a roof, no roof? On my porch, sit outdoors 7 days. What do I do there? How do I build it? How do I make it? How big? How small? I don't know. Ooh, this was just the note of the shiur. But if you heard the shiur, you heard everything. Comes the Gemarah in Sukkah and says, Besukkahs, he spelled without a vav. Why did he spell it without a vav? The answer is because he wants to tell you how many walls. Just an example. It says Besukkas, Besukkas, Besukkos, etc. The whole Torah could be understood this way. So when the Rambam says, Torah b'firushad nitna, Torah was given with its pirush, it's not just he gave a Torah, he also gave commentary. Torah b'firushad nitna. Torah was given with the pirush of Torah. The text was given with the shiur, with the lecture. So the text encapsulates the whole Torah Shabbal Peh. When the Gemarah now figures out stuff from the Psukim, it's not that the Chazal took this text and they're like, okay, we're going to drive ourselves crazy and figure out the halachas from here and invent new things. They knew this very, very well. So therefore, the text of Chumash they had open in front of them. They knew all of these principles about the text and all of the formulas that Moshe taught how to interpret the text and how to decipher it. Those are called the Shloish Esrei Midas, Shah Torah Nidireshes Behen, that we say every morning before Haidu. Rabbi Shmuel says there are 13 ways that you have to understand how to look at the text. And with this, they reconstructed the Shir. The Gemarah is not Stam Gemarah. Gemarah is reconstructing what Moshe said. From the text, we're reconstructing the lectures of Moshe Rabbeinu to the Jewish people in the desert. Because he put it all in the psukim. He put it all into the text in a very brief and concise way, in an extraordinarily brief and concise way. And that's why the text has so much in it. So they take the text and they go back from the written, they go back to the oral. Where in their history, chronologically, it worked the other way. From the oral, they went to the written. They heard the shir, and then they got it, and they could hold on to it, and they could read it, and they could look at one sentence, and they say, we got it. All we have is the written. Now we go from the written back and reconstruct the presentation, the structure. This is going to be a classic example for this. We know that we don't have chametz erev Pesach midday. Doesn't say anywhere in Chumash. How did this happen? But it does say. But for this, you have to be able to analyze the text and see how he wrote the text, and then you could reach these conclusions. This is an introduction I'm giving to this Gemarah, but as I said, it's not just for this piece of Gemarah. It's for hundreds and hundreds of pieces of Gemarah that have the same premise and yesod of understanding how you have to look at Chumash. So let's see, yeah? That's something else, yeah? He looked into the Torah and he created the world. That's true too. Well, it wasn't Moshe's own document. It was dictated from Hashem. You want to know how to reconcile the idea that Torah is before the world of creation and Moshe wrote the Torah. That's a general question, not on this shir. But obviously, when we say that the Torah preceded the creation of the world, you have to understand what that means, because most of Torah is stories that happen post-creation. If Torah preceded the creation of the world, how does the Torah say that Yosef's brother sold him into slavery? They weren't even created yet. And what does it mean the Jews left Egypt? They weren't in Egypt. And what does it mean that Cain murdered Hevel? Cain didn't exist and Hevel didn't exist and Adam didn't eat from the tree yet. So we have to understand what that means, that the Torah preceded the creation of the world. Does it mean the stories the way they are in a spiritual sense, not the stories the way they are in a concrete physical sense? That's one of the explanations. In other words, every story exists on many, many layers. And in Torah it says a person is going to die and the corpse is tamei for 7 days. Before the creation of the world, there was no death. In fact, people weren't supposed to die, only after Adam ate from the tree. So this is a very big question, how to reconcile that to. That's a wonderful question. But it's not for this shir. Perhaps, yeah. Yeah. In Gemarah, there's a question, Maseches Gittin, Daf Samach, if Torah Megillah nitna, or Torah Chasuma nitna, meaning that Moshe give, at every shir, every day, he gave another little text of the Chumash, and then at the end of 40 years, he put it all together, right? That's one opinion, and the other opinion is he gave it at the end. But whatever the idea was, the text contains all of the material. And much more probably than he didn't say. I don't mean that the text is limited to what he said. The text has pshat and remez and drush sod and infinity. So I'm sure there's things in the text that Moshe himself didn't say. But the point is, there's things in the text that he didn't say, but there's nothing that he said that's not in the text. Or at least most of what he said is in the text. That's what they learned. They learned Taryag Mitzvah Torah. Maimon was just a Seres Hadibras. Yeah, just as Sarah said, Ma'amad Har Sinai probably took 60 seconds. I mean, I don't know. Officially I was there, but I don't remember. But Ma'amad Har Sinai, it says all the Neshamas were there. But Ma'amad Har Sinai could have taken 60 seconds or 3 minutes or 5 minutes. Or it wasn't a long experience necessarily. It was a moment. That's a good question. What's then Machlokes HaTanoim, right? Machlokes HaTanoim could be a few things. Machlokes HaTanoim could be how to read the text, yes. How to see in the text, that's one type of machlokes. But there's another type of machlokes. And that is, new situations come up in life, right, that were not written about in the text. Completely, and here they have to use their mind of how to apply, when to apply. Like lahavdil, the Constitution, you have the Constitution, but now new situations come up, and how do you use the Constitution to apply to these situations? Here it's already using their logic, so this is a whole different type of machlokes hatanayim. So there could be different types. You understand what I'm saying? So that could be a whole different category of machlokes hatanayim. Balpez Dairaisa. The difference of Dairaisa and the Rabbanon is something else completely. When you say a mitzvah de Rabbanon, let's say Chanukah candles, that's not in the text of Chumash. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't say it either. It's not Torah Shebeksav, it's not Torah Shebalpeh. After the stories of Chanukah, the Sanhedrin of the time, the Beis Din of the time, decided, right, to create a Yom Tov Chanukah, yeah, or the mitzvah of saying Hallel, or washing hands before bread, or take Shabbos candles, or Purim. These types of things, reading the Megillah on Purim, these are, or Shemona Esrei, right? These are mitzvahs, they're Rabbanan, meaning they created these mitzvahs. How did they have the authority for it? That's in the text. In the text, that's that the Beis Din has the authority to be able to make fences. How can Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda make a fence of an hour before? Who could Rabbi Meir tell me when to stop eating chametz, right? Rabbi Yehuda could tell me. Right, that could be another argument of Tanaim, a third type of argument. They're not arguing about text. They're not arguing here about a new situation. They're arguing about a buffer, right? But the Sanhedrin took it up on a vote. They took it on a vote, and the text gives them that power. That's called a mitzvah de Rabbana, but it's not a mitzvah min Torah taka. It's not a mitzvah.
It's an event that occurred after.
Yes, later in history, where they may have added a buffer, or they may have made a takana, or they may have made a new mitzvah, but it's called a mitzvah de Rabbana. Like lighting Shabbos candles before sunset to be able to eat in light, not in darkness, that's a mitzvah de Rabbana. It doesn't say in the text, it's not part of the obligations of Shabbos, not in Torah Shebeksav, not in Torah Shebalpeh. But not plowing on Shabbos, or not harvesting on Shabbos, or not riding on Shabbos, right? That doesn't say clearly in Chumash, doesn't say in Chumash you're not allowed to ride on Shabbos, it says in Chumash you're not allowed to light a fire on Shabbos. But when Moshe spoke about Shabbos, he gave them the 39 types of labors that were forbidden. Elu ve'elu kim chaim, we say about every machloikus. That every machloikus, it's elu ve'elu about every machloikus, elu ve'elu kim chaim. Okay, let's start at least for a few minutes, and then we'll continue the sugya tomorrow. But let's start.
I heard that at the end of his life, the Vilna Gaon was only learning Chumash because he could learn everything out from the
Okay, yeah. Well, he was very into this, yeah. No, in his commentary, he's very into this, yeah. The Vilna Gaon. So he says like this. So the Kula Alma Miya Chametz B'Shei Shos L'Mayla Asur Minola. How do we know? Amar Abaya, comes Abaya. And Abaya says, Trei Kroi Ksivi. We have a problem. The problem is we have two psukim and they contradict each other. Now I want to show you the contradiction so you'll be able to appreciate it. So please open up now your Chumash to Parshas Beis, Shmois chapter 12. If you don't have a Chumash, you could just look with somebody else. You want to Shmois Perek Yud Beis. Okay. Now we have to remember the context. This is the first time Moshe speaks to the Jewish people right before Yetzias Mitzrayim. Yeah. Go to Perek Yud Beis. Perek Yud Beis, Pasuk Tes Vav. Perek Yud Beis, Pasuk Tes Vav. That's the middle of Parshas Beis. Moshe is speaking to the Jews right before they're going to leave Mitzrayim. He's speaking to them on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, 2 weeks before they leave Egypt, and he's giving them the commandments, what to do the night before the Exodus. To have to buy a sheep and a goat, every family, and offer a sheep and a goat, and sprinkle the blood on the door, and then they're going to eat it that night with matzah and maror. Pasuk Tesvav, Pasuk Yudalit. Now remember how important text is, right, after this whole introduction. This day should be remembered. In other words, it's not a one-time celebration. This will be a holiday for generations, an eternal statue. Pesach is going to be a yearly holiday. This is the first time he's introducing the Yom Tov Pesach. Now comes the key text in our Gemarah and the first few chapters of Pesachim. Shivas Yamim Matzos Techelu. 7 days you should eat matzahs. Okay, that's clear. 7 days I'm supposed to eat matzahs. However, by Yom HaRishon, on the first day, Tashbisu Sa'ir Mibateicha. You should eliminate yeast from your homes. These are critical words for the Masechta Pesachim. Without this pasuk, you go nowhere, right? What tashbisu is by Yom HaRishon. Now, the way you learn it, what do I see here? How would I interpret it? 7 days you should eat matzah. However, ach means only. On the first day, I would say, on the first day of the 7 days. On the first day, you should eliminate chametz. That's what I would say. Which means, if Pesach starts on the 15th day of Nisan, when do I eliminate chametz? On the 15th day of Nisan. It says 7 days eat matzah. Remember, Pesach is a 7-day holiday. In America, it's an 8-day holiday, but we're talking here, the ideal, the original holidays are 7 days. Pesach is 7 days, right? We added a day because of our confusion. The 8th day is of the Rabbanon, right? That's a good mitzvah the Rabbanon, but there was a reason for it, because they didn't know. They didn't know what was the first day, so they said, as a suffix, you have to add a day, right? That's called Yom Tov Sheni Shel Golius. Well, it's the Rabbanon now. Then it was not Mamish the Rabbanon, it was a suffix d'oraisa. And now we know which day is the first day because we have a calendar. But the rabbi said still do an extra day because a minig avaysechem biyadechem to hold on the old custom in the diaspora. So now it's a clear mitzvah the Rabbanon. In the past it was a suffix d'oraisa because they really didn't know which day is Pesach. You understand? So that's an important distinction because now we know. It's a mitzvah the Rabbanon only in Chutz La'aretz. Well, in Eretz Yisrael there's no second day. Besides Shavuos. Besides Rosh Hashanah. So, Ach b'yom HaRishon.
How do you know if it's just looking without any taich on it? If it's a 7-day holiday and it says Yom Rishon, eliminate something that's you can't have on the holiday. Haven't you reduced it to a 6-day holiday?
Okay, very good question. But it's good question. So he says 7 days eat matzah. On the first day eliminate. Key, because Kol oichel chametz, whoever eats chametz, the soul will get cut off. Here we know that the penalty for eating chametz is kares. Whoever eats chametz, the soul is going to get cut off from the first day till the 7th. Doesn't mean the soul is going to get cut off from the first day till the 7th day. Here is an example of how the text was written. You see how problematic this text is? He should have said, whoever eats chametz from the first day to the 7th day, the soul will get cut off. You don't say, whoever eats chametz, the soul will get cut off from the first day to the 7th day. But this is called awkward text. You don't write like this. If you would write like this in your 7th grade, if you took English, to those who did, if you wrote such a sentence, you know what you would get on your test, right? And yet, Moshe exactly wrote it this way because of a particular reason. This is where you right away see awkward text, because he wants to bring something out. But this is just an example. You have this hundreds of times in Chumash. So whoever eats chametz, the soul will get cut off from the first day to the 7th day. So he says twice in this pasuk, 7 days you should eat matzah. You're not allowed to eat chametz from the first day to the 7th day, and on the first day you should eliminate chametz. Okay.
So you can have chametz on the first day?
That's what I would say. If I wouldn't be reading this text, I would say that on the first day of Pesach, you could still have chametz, but at some point you should eliminate it. I still have to ask, when on the first day? In the morning, in the afternoon, almost in the evening? Then I don't know. This is where I have to deal with this text. Okay. Tesvav, next pasuk he says. No, I'm sorry, Tes Zayin, pasuk Tes Zayin, Exodus 12:16. Ubayom harishon mikra kodesh. On the first day is a calling of holiness, meaning it's a holy day. Bayom hashvi mikra kodesh yelachem. On the 7th day, it's a calling of holiness to you. Again, I'm just going to point out all these awkwardness in the text. For the first day, he doesn't say lachem. For the 7th day, he decides it's lachem. What's the difference? The first day is not a holiday for you. Only the 7th day is a holiday for you. Could have said lachem on the first day. Again, this is examples of how people learn Chumash. They don't realize all of these intricacies. But this is what Chazal were constantly focused on. Okay. Kol malacha le'yaseh, no work could be done on the first day and the 7th day, because we know the middle days are Chol Hamayit, right? Which is not like the 1st and 7th day, but the first day of Pesach, the 7th day of Pesach is what we call Yom Tov. You could do work if you have to prepare food, which is the source that you're allowed to work on Yom Tov, do labors on Yom Tov in order for people to eat. For example, cooking, we do on Yom Tov, this is the source. Yud Zayin, ushmartem es hamatzes, you should guard your matzahs. Okay, he's telling us here that we have to guard the matzahs, and he gives the reason, because God took you out of Egypt. Ushmartem es hayom hazeh. Yud Ches, back. Bar Rishon, on the first day, Bar Ba Asar Chodesh, Bar Ba Asar on the 14th, Yom LaChodesh of the month, Ba'erev Toichlu Matzahs. A new obligation now. On the night of the 14th, you eat matzah. Now here is the whole source of Seder night, that the night of Pesach I have to eat matzah. Before he told me I eat matzahs for 7 days. But now he says, Barishon, on the first, what's the first? So you could say the first is what, the first day or the first month? The Targum Onkelos says on the Pasuk Yud Ches, take a look at Targum Onkelos, Benissen. Where did he get the word Benissen? Because Barishon, he said, is the first month, not the first day. Barishon is the first month, but it doesn't say the first month, it says the first. On the 14th day of the month, at night, eat matzahs, ad yoyma echad vesem l'chodesh b'erev, until the 21st day at night. So, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. 21 is the 7th day. Yutes. Here is another key text in the whole Pesachim. Shivas yomim, 7 days, sa'or lo yimatzeh b'bateichem. Yeast, chametz, should not be found in your home. Key, why? Again, kol oichel chametz v'nichrisa hanefeshim adaso b'ger bezer. Because whoever eats machmetzes, whoever eats chametz, that soul will be cut off from the Jewish community if he's a convert, etc. Kol machmetzes lo yisachelu. Don't eat any chametz. B'chol ma'ash v'seichem toichel matzes. And all you said is eat matzes. So Abaye says, I'm going to, unfortunately, time is up. We're going to leave it with a question. Let's just take a look a moment in the Gemarah. Trei kroi ksivi, we have a contradiction. Ksiv shivas yom mis'or lo yimatzeh b'bateichem. It says in Pasuk Yutes, right? Shmois Yud Beis Yutes. 7 days, chametz should not be found in your house. That's a blanket statement. 7 days, no chametz in your house. Uksiv, it also says, a few verses earlier, Pasuk Tesvav, right? Ach b'yom harishon tashbisu somer b'bateichem. On the first day, you should eliminate yeast. Ha ketzat. You're giving me two texts, two psukim almost near each other about the same holiday, and you're contradicting yourself. Why are you contradicting yourself? As Rashi puts it, take a look in Rashi. Shivas yom sa'or lo yimatzeh b'bateichem, afilu shah achas b'toich shivas yomim. 7 days don't have chametz means not even 1 hour of those 7 days. For these 7 days, no chametz, that means none of the 7 days, not even an hour. Uksiv ach b'yoyim harishon tashbisu harei shah b'shah achas. But in the other pasuk you told me, on the first day you should eliminate. On the first day, meaning at some point in the middle of that day. So you're giving me an hour, at least an hour, because you're telling me to eliminate it on that day. If I'm eliminating it on that day, it means that on that day it's there. Because if it's not there, I can't eliminate it on that day. So you tell me 7 days no chametz, but on the first day you should eliminate it. But if I'm eliminating it on the first day, it means you're giving me wiggle room, you're giving me room. Shah by shah achas. Shah achas doesn't necessarily mean an hour. It could be a minute, it could be 5 minutes, it could be 20 minutes, it could be 2 hours. But you're giving me time. So we have here two texts that are undermining each other. Don't tell me 7 days not, and then you tell me no. I didn't mean 7 days. I meant 6.5 days. Because really, the first day, you still have chametz, because I'm telling you to get rid of the chametz. This is Abaye's contradiction. And therefore, Abaye finishes and says, Haketzat? How do I reconcile it? Le rabbis arba asr lebiyur. I am forced to say that the first day does not mean the first day of Pesach. It means the 14th day of Nisan is the time to eliminate chametz. Arba asa. It says the first day. Good question. We have to address that. But I'm forced. I have no choice. That's why the rabbi said you cannot start getting rid of chametz Pesach night because 7 days. No. Already earlier, on the 14th day, I have to get rid of chametz. That's why it was obvious by everybody that midday I have to get rid of chametz. Now the question is, where did they get to midday? What do you do with Yom Harishon? This is all still hanging in the air. But this is the premise that Abaye gave us. I have a contradiction. I have to deal with this contradiction, and therefore either I could say it doesn't make sense, or I could say he changed his mind. First he said the first day eliminate, then he said, oh no, I changed my mind, which of course would undermine the entire authenticity of Torah, because it means I can't trust anything, right? There are people, they'll say 1 minute this, and 3 minutes later they'll say, yeah, you know what, forget it. The whole 7 days is not good. But that wouldn't work, obviously, if we're taking this text seriously as Torah Hashem, as godly. And therefore, Abaye says, we are forced to reinterpret the text and say, Yom HaRishon means something else. Rashi, HaKetzad l'Rabbis, Al Karchach, Hai HaRishon, Rishon Koidem l'Chol Shiva Ka'amar Dainu Arbas. When it says Rishon, it doesn't mean the first day. It means the first before 7. It says the first. It means the first before 7. That's what I have to say. I have no choice. I'm forced into that uncomfortable corner. It wouldn't be my first choice, but I have no choice. In other words, it's the 14th. That is Abaye's premise. How Chazal, from this text, made a new idea that Torah, biblically, Minat Torah, you're not allowed to have chametz already on the 14th day of Nis. We shall continue, God willing, tomorrow morning.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.